Hey, say you don't really know someone until it's too late. I used to laugh at that line, thought it was just something bitter people said to make themselves feel better. But now I understand it, because I was married for 10 years to a man I didn't really know, and I didn't figure it out in therapy, or after a fight. I figured it out when I took the wrong train. Funny, right? All that love, all those anniversaries, and it only took one missed stop to see the truth. It was a Tuesday morning. I was running late, hair still damp, breath fogging in the cold. I remember thinking, he's going to be annoyed again. He always hated when I was late, even if it was for things that had nothing to do with him. So I ran. I remember the rush. My heels clicking on the pavement, my chest tightening with each second. I was always in a rush, always chasing time, chasing peace. Chasing his approval, didn't check the sign. That morning, the doors slid open and I jumped in, never even looked at the destination. And that's when everything changed. At first, I didn't realize it. The train was warm, quiet. I actually felt a moment of peace. It wasn't until the buildings outside started looking unfamiliar that I noticed. Wrong train, wrong direction. But I didn't panic. I just sat there watching the world blur by. And somewhere in that silence, in that stillness, I started thinking, and that's when everything started to come into focus. Not just the train tracks, but my life. My perfect little life that I had curated like a Pinterest board wasn't mine at all. When was the last time I sat still and just thought, not planned, not fixed, not cleaned up someone else's mess, but really thought about me? That's when it hit me. I didn't miss the train. I missed myself, the woman I used to be, curious, loud, a little chaotic. She was gone, replaced by someone quiet, polished, controlled. Daniel always liked it that way. Let me handle things, he'd say. Don't stress about the finances, he'd insist. I thought that was love. But what I was really doing was disappearing. I stared out the window, remembering how he'd call me too emotional any time I disagreed, how my opinions were cute, how he'd flash that smug smile whenever he corrected me in front of others. I thought that was safety, but it was control. And slowly over the years, I stopped asking questions. I let him do the taxes. I let him choose the vacations. I let him decide what we needed when really he meant what he wanted, and I thought that was normal. He made good money. We had a nice house. He was charming at parties, called me his rock. Everyone thought our marriage was perfect. But what they didn't see was how I disappeared inside it. What they didn't hear were the sighs when I spoke, the subtle digs masked as jokes, the way he'd correct my stories in front of others, like I was some confused child. I brushed it off for years, told myself all couples go through this, told myself I was just sensitive. But that train, the one I wasn't supposed to be on it, gave me something I hadn't had in years' perspective. And that's when the question started. Why was my name missing from our second mortgage papers? Why didn't I have access to our joint savings anymore? Why was he so protective of his phone lately? So when I got back home, hours later, I didn't apologize. I didn't explain. I waited for him to get home and watched his face when I asked him outright, "Are you hiding something from me?" He laughed, that condescending chuckle he always used when he thought I was being dramatic. That night, when he fell asleep, I opened his laptop. Passwords were the same. He never thought I'd look, and there it was. Messages, photos, financial statements, a second credit card, an apartment lease. He was leaving me. But quietly, strategically, legally, he wasn't just cheating on me, he was replacing me, and I had been too blinded by routine by his approval to see it. I sat on the kitchen floor for 2 hours, not crying, just stunned. It wasn't just betrayal. It was erasure. He had slowly rewritten our life to fit only him and left me as a footnote. All these years, I thought we were building a life together, but I was just decorating his transition plan. And in that moment, sitting there in the dark, beside a man who once promised to protect me, I didn't cry. I got angry. Because while I was shrinking to keep peace, he was plotting his exit. While I was walking on eggshells, he was walking into someone else's bed. And suddenly, everything made sense. The coldness, the secrets, the way he always needed to be right. He didn't love me. He loved control. He loved the version of me that was silent, small, and compliant, and I'm not her anymore. So no, that train ride wasn't a mistake. It was a warning, a whisper from the universe. Wake up, Emily. You're running out of time. And I did. I woke up. I spent the next week planning quietly, like he had. I copied every document, tracked every lie. I called a lawyer, made a folder labeled insurance, and hid the truth inside. He still doesn't know I know. Not yet. But he will. Because the woman he tried to make disappear. She's done shrinking. She's done being erased. They thought our marriage was perfect, but perfection only lasts when one person keeps pretending. And I'm done pretending. So yeah, maybe I took the wrong train, but it took me to the truth, and that truth is going to destroy the little fantasy he built around himself. And when it does, he won't see me coming. They say clarity comes in silence. For me, it came in the click of a lock. Daniel always locked his laptop, but that night he left it open. A mistake, one he would come to regret. I knew about the apartment in Brooklyn. I knew about the woman named Natalie. I knew about the offshore account, the travel plans, the sudden weekend trips that I once believed were just team-building retreats. I knew he was planning to leave me and take everything with him. For a few minutes, I sat in that knowledge like it was a storm, building in my chest. It wasn't sadness. It was rage. Pure, electric, purifying rage. The kind that doesn't just want answers. It wants justice. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I planned. I made copies of every file. I memorized the passwords. I printed out the receipts and placed them in a brown envelope labeled Garden Receipts, something so mundane it would never raise suspicion. I opened a new bank account. I moved my paycheck. I found a lawyer. And then I waited. Not because I was scared, but because I wanted to look him in the eye when I burned the fantasy to the ground. I started leaving small breadcrumbs, asking questions I already knew the answers to, watching him squirm in the discomfort of his own web. One night while we were eating dinner, I told him I was thinking of taking a trip alone. He smirked. "Since when do you go anywhere without me?" Exactly. That weekend I packed a bag and stayed in a hotel 5 blocks away, just to see what he would do. He didn't even notice. The next morning I came home and he looked surprised. Not that I had been gone, but that I had come back. That was the moment I realized he had already replaced me in his mind, already deleted me from the narrative. I was no longer his partner. I was a placeholder. He didn't expect me to fight back. But I did. The night of the confrontation came faster than I imagined. I lit candles. I cooked dinner. I set the table like it was our anniversary, because this was a celebration of endings, of rebirths, of revelations. He walked in, loosened his tie, kissed my cheek like everything was normal, and then he saw the brown envelope on his plate. He froze. He picked it up slowly, like it was a bomb, and in many ways, it was. Inside were the photos, the financial records, the emails, a printed quote from his messages to Natalie. She still doesn't know. I'm working on a clean exit. I watched his face shift, panic, then anger, then arrogance. He always thought he could talk his way out of anything, but I wasn't the same woman he married. I told him everything I knew, every lie he told, every move he made. I told him about the lawyer, the account, the divorce papers he'd be served tomorrow morning. He tried to interrupt, didn't let him. For the first time in our marriage, I owned the room. And then I said it. You didn't just betray a wife. You underestimated a woman who gave you everything, and now you get to watch me take it all back. He stormed out, slammed the door, just like always. But this time, I didn't follow. I didn't beg. I didn't shrink. I poured myself a glass of wine, sat in the silence, and smiled. The next week was chaos. The lawyer filed. The assets froze. The truth unfolded like an avalanche. Natalie? She didn't know he was married. I sent her everything. Her silence was deafening. His job? Gone. The company frowned upon secret bank accounts and marital fraud. The apartment in Brooklyn never got leased. Not in his name, anyway. In the end, he tried to paint me as hysterical, manipulative, the scorned wife. But I came prepared. I had dates, documents, timelines, truth. The courtroom was cold, but I was colder, and when the judge ruled in my favor, when she looked at me and said, "You deserve better," I believed her, because I had finally told my story. Not the story Daniel wrote for me, not the story of the perfect marriage, but the real one. The raw one, the one where I lost myself and then found someone stronger underneath. They thought our marriage was perfect, but they didn't see the bruises on my self-worth. They didn't see the nights I cried in the laundry room. They didn't see me slowly suffocating beneath his love. Now they do, because I stood up, I spoke out, I stopped apologizing for being too much, too loud, too emotional, and I walked away. Not broken, not bitter, but whole. I took the wrong train that morning, and it took me exactly where I needed to go.